Hello there, Rabbi. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Morning, Joe.
In my youth, I used to joke, only half seriously, about forming a new religion, the First Church of the Casual Conversationalist. I talk to God when I'm driving in the car, when I'm working in the kitchen, when I'm sitting at my drawing board. I say, God, do you think this is funny? What do you think, Lord? Thank you for helping me find my car keys, Lord. I would have been in real trouble if I couldn't have put my hands on them in the next 5 minutes. What do you think of that? Is that a good prayer?
So you just defined all different aspects of prayer. The word prayer is not ubiquitous. That's not the right word. We have many, many definitions for the word prayer. Sometimes we mean supplication. Sometimes we mean a thank you. Sometimes it's a request for something. And because we use the same word for so many different things, it's difficult to have a conversation or talk about prayer because we have to start by defining. So let's take prayer down to really the basic. And you summarized it with your religion. Prayer is a conversation with God. And as with anyone, when you have a conversation, you can make requests, you can make thank yous, you can put everything under having a conversation with God. I have in the past mentioned worship. Worship is an organized service that has rules. It may include a prayer. However, worship has the rules that prayer does not have. So let's put worship aside for now and talk about having a conversation with God. Well, notice my bookshelves behind me, Joe. If I want to get to the top, I have to climb up a ladder. I can't quite reach the top shelf without a ladder of some kind. What a great image about a conversation with God. Prayer is a ladder, a conversation. Now, the point. Each of us has to decide what kind of a conversation we're going to have at that particular moment. Am I going to do what might be called a blessing? Saying, thank you, God, or bless this food, or I'm humble, or I recognize what you've done. So I may want to do a blessing. It is a prayer, but a subcategory called a blessing. I may want to do a request. God, I can't find my car keys. Or help me pass this test. Or God, if I pass this test, I'll become a rabbi. And so we may want to make a deal with God. Let's make a deal, God. None of this is wrong. There are no rules about prayer. There are rules about worship, since worship is a set of prayers and statements in an order. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a conversation. So I'm standing on my ladder and I'm going to have a conversation. I'm troubled by some things. However, I don't need God to intercede. I need to organize myself. So I'm going to recite prayers as a form of meditation, as a mantra, as a way to help focus my thoughts. So I may recite the same prayer over and over again, or I may have a little book and go prayer to prayer, in which case I'm using it to focus, to meditate, to look into myself. Okay? Well, I'm standing on my ladder and I feel obligated to say certain prayers. So I take out my prayer book and I say them because I feel obligated. Nothing wrong with that. It's a matter of reflecting and seeing at a particular moment what is your goal with the conversation with God. No rules. Now you're going to say, oh, I don't hear God answering me. So how can I have a one-way conversation? Here, we have to put aside our traditional ways of having a conversation, because we're dealing with something spiritual. When I deal with another human being or an animal, they're physically present and they can respond, they can react with their eyes, with the voice, with body language. They can react because it's material. When we have a conversation with God, we've entered a spiritual realm. We're dealing with thoughts, with feelings. We're dealing with non-tangible reality. So I can't use tangible reality criteria. I can expect to hear a well-modulated voice because that's not how it works. So each one of us has to work out how we have a conversation. And we do it with each other. We do it with our partners. We do it with our dogs and cats. Many times we communicate and no words are spoken, yet we know that something's going on. So when we have a conversation with God, each of us has to decide, has to understand how I'm going to have that conversation and not rule it out just because it's not material. Maybe a dream, maybe a voice, maybe a thought, maybe an action. Maybe you pick up a book off the bookshelf you never thought of picking up. All of these are ways that God responds to us. And as I just said, each of us has to figure out how it's happening, how we're having a conversation, and not just resort to that. I want to hear a well-modulated voice, because rarely does that happen.
Well, I'm not necessarily interested in a well-modulated voice as I am in next week's lottery numbers, but thank you, Rabbi. As always, I appreciate your wisdom and suggestions. And when I open my congregation, I want you to be in the front row.
I wouldn't limit your prayer, Joe. If you want to ask God for the winning lottery numbers, go ahead. God may give you the winning lottery numbers in a dream, in a doodle, in a book.